Breathe in! Kyouryuger change!
Let's go! 輝くマシンライダーライダー仮面ライダー仮面ライダーライダーライダー
Well, people were finally going to do a recent Sentai series, Zyuden Sentai kyouryuger, and it's considered a mixed bag. After the ratings and sales of Go Busters were declared to be meh, to put it politely, the popular rumor was Toei blamed its lacking popularity on how dark and serious the story was. It wasn't. It was more in how the series was dull and badly choreographed for many, taking forever to get to its good parts, and lacked character focus and development to make the cast appeal to the audience in the interim. I've heard a lot of defenses for Go Busters, but I feel the root problem was Yasuko Kobayashi was beating her decline as a writer, writing other shows on top of it, and the show's action scenes gutted availability for her to write more than filler plots she is bad with. So its storyline was stuffed in where she could fit it. And a mandated retool near the end meant the plot and character points either went nowhere, wrapped without resolution, and or felt pretentious. Though feeling pretentious is a constant problem with Kobayashi works I've found. An example of what I'm talking about that I've mentioned before is Yellow Buster had more of a character and development in Superhero Tyson Z than in the show she was a main character of. And the Spring Tyson movies written by Shoji Onomura are synonymous with character assassination, not development. The staff then threw a tantrum by parodying a novel Sentai concept in their V-cinema to show how worse the show could have been, made it clear they didn't understand why their show wasn't popular. For those who do like it, that's the closest I can get in brief to describing why many did not, as Go Busters really wasn't that bad a show, just one I personally did not enjoy. I'd take it over any of the post-kyouryuger series, though. But after this, Toei decided they should go back to their tried-and-true method of getting Sentai's reception a boost. And by tried and true, I mean has backfired nearly every time they've done it. They follow up a bad, flopped, or messed up show with a silly series! I call it the Car Ranger effect! This is a long-running misconception many series commit, that when a series does badly, it must be because of the dark, serious, mature story, and we have to lighten it up to the point of being farcical to get people back watching. Not realizing what came before did in fact have a bunch of silly stuff happen in it, but were often the reason for its lagging reception if they were not properly integrated, as it would undermine and strangle its story as opposed to finding a balance. Thus, they do the opposite of what is needed to fix the show. In reality, what helps any series recover from reception drops isn't stylization and silliness oblivious of issues, but acknowledging the complaints and fixing them, replacing what's bad with good storytelling, likable characters, and interesting premises, that makes people want to come back week after week as it appeals to them, which in Sentai's case are usually undermined in the comedy ones as the jokes and silliness supersede telling a good story as they don't make sense to exist, or what they otherwise do with the cast makes them unappealing. So with Sentai, we have to suffer through a bad show to get good ones again, as it reminds the current staff, wait, no, this doesn't work. And there's the paradox that arises with Zyuden, aka Electro Beast, Sentai kyouryuger. It wasn't really a silly series in the way Toei wanted, as head writer Riku Sanjo knows how to balance silliness with good storytelling, and it's probably why kyouryuger did as well as it did. Also, I'm not arguing the J versus Z romanization error for the title, as it's evoking an ideaphone, essentially a word representative of an action like, say, Kachidoki being an ideaphone for a rallying war cry, and in this case it is for electricity zapping. The series is heavy on the English, but that one at least has an explanation for asserting it that way.
But it's not like kyouryuger got the kind of feedback needed to show, yes, being a ludicrous show actually works. 'Cause it didn't, as kyouryuger eventually had ratings sink below Go Busters, in part from parent watch groups having, well, issues with the show, and Sanjo having none of their bullshit as they screwed with his more recent series, so was pretty much at war with them. Though these days, the success of any given series can be shown to be more weighted by merchandise sales than viewership to judge its audience reception.
It's a bad means of doing so, but reception analysis is difficult in a post-DVR recording era, and more data points make any analysis more accurate with addressing its wider impact. And due to the Beast Battery toy line gimmick, kyouryuger sold far better than its predecessor did, making it the third highest selling Sentai series that we have record of at 14.4 billion yen before adjusting for inflation. O-Ranger that I reviewed last year having 15.9, and Gyouryuger being 14.5. And if it makes that much money, they don't care if the ratings tanked or what caused them to tank. Though it was probably helped that dinosaur themes always are a big seller whenever they happen. But no, kyouryuger's good silliness is more that, even when it was dumb, it was fun. Entertaining, but not taking advantage of everything and one. You're not bored with what's happening, the characters and situations don't insult your intelligence, and with how they wink at the camera you can admit, okay, it's not the best, but I can enjoy it for what's here. And at points, it felt like a similar reconstruction of Sentai like Sanjo had done with Kamen Rider. But while kyouryuger was enjoyed in the short term, it let Toei's mistaken premise of being silly over anything else fester, even though kyouryuger really did not commit that sin.
As 3 of the last 4 series since kyouryuger have ended up being insufferable and received negatively, as they missed the fucking point of what made kyouryuger and by proxy the greater Sentai franchise popular. Most of the cast would end up disregarded in favor of their Sentai Red, who would steal the show from his co-stars with their annoying antics and blatant idiocy. With their actions retroactively justified inexcusably in the story when all reason, and the example of past and other running series, agree that their conduct should be getting people murdered. And when the rest of the cast get focused, often was either stupid or killed much of what was likable about them. The absurd elements are widely out of place and smother or supersede any serious aspect of its story. They relied heavily on Deus Ex Machina for unexplained story contrivances, and they just repeat past series and characters, only do them worse. As a commonality in bad Toei works is they copy something successful without understanding why what they're copying worked, only seeing the superficial or flawed aspects, which then get further exaggerated. The only post-kyouryuger Sentai that isn't awful to date is kyouryuger, which managed to avoid most of these mistakes with proper story structuring and a greater rotating focus on the team, but suffered from its characterization being bland, and the only one that had an arc possessed one different than what the show insisted was there.
Now I wouldn't exactly blame all of that on kyouryuger for inspiring this nonsense, as Toei has always ignored recurring problems until it bites them. And it's not like the creative staff on this show went out of their way to make a bad series by not understanding the basics of writing, characterization, and direction as happened after it.
For the men helming kyouryuger creatively were Riku Sanjo, who I gave context to his work from reviewing Kamen Rider Double, and head director Koichi Sakamoto, though there are other directors on the show. Sakamoto I have also discussed previously, and how his action scenes and direction keep things energetic, lively, and tell their own story with their consistency, making him one of the best directors even in mediocre to bad works in the industry, despite the misconceptions about him being responsible for the Cal-splosions during the Disney era of Power Rangers.
When he wasn't. He was the executive producer during those years, and the executive producer usually does not have direct involvement on that. That is normally up to the supervising producer and showrunner in charge of the creative staff, which was Bruce Kalish. Kalish tried to pass the buck a lot and went bad during his tenure, which makes any claims it was Sakamoto suspect.
Mark Harris was the actual stunt director and choreographer in charge of most of the Disney era, and where the blame should ultimately lie on such, as he was the one actually responsible for creating and directing the stunts. And it wasn't immediately horrible in Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder due to the show heads being more experienced in mediating the issue, as it's when Kalish came in that it just got insufferable.
That, and Harris wasn't the only stunt coordinator back then. Makoto Yokohama, who is now known as the head director for the Garo franchise that I talk about every October, was a Power Rangers director until the end of Dino Thunder. Then Kalish came in, and Harris was promoted to the full-time stunt coordinator and director, which is when people started to note the stunt coordination turning to crap. This information will actually all tie back to when I get to Dino Charge, trust me. But my point is, everyone that says Sakamoto was the one making the action scenes unappealing provides no evidence that it was Sakamoto, only showcasing Disney-era explosions that neither he nor his stunt team were involved in creating. Seriously, check the credits of the Kalish era. Sakamoto and Alpha Stunts were not credited as doing the stunt work like they were in the Saban era, nor have I even seen any interview Sakamoto's done where he admits to that, and I think that would have been cited by now. Hell, he did stunt work for Toei some of those years, which got him his big break to do directing for a lot of Japanese properties, including Ultraman and several other big pop culture events, including the upcoming Mob Psycho live-action adaptation. Looking forward to that, by the way.
Yes, while Sakamoto uses similar explosions in his directorial and choreography work, so there is some overlap, and as he's a more hands-on director, Sakamoto does have involvement in choreographing stunts in what he directs. The explosions are not the end-all, be-all focus in his action scenes, but meant to accent other dynamic choreography, as he is a man that lives and breathes dynamic, flowing action. We have had numerous other citations of work he is actually credited for which show complete contradiction on this to what was present in the Disney years where their go-to effect for original stunts was massive gasoline explosions, which they then would focus on in slow-mo instead of the action. And the sheer amount of other credited work he is actually responsible for has ultimately proved itself incongruent with the Kalish years, and why find that assertion so ludicrous?
Though yes, I do agree he is far too gratuitous with explosives to accent his fights. Kyoryuger the biggest offender for that, to the point of not even bothering to disguise the detonation packs like they're supposed to. And don't get me wrong, I agree that is a detraction for this series. But with how he compensates with other things, it never reaches the level of unnecessarily gratuitous that the Kalish era suffered with Harris. And even to the Kalish year's credit, no matter how bad anything in Power Rangers gets, Toei has done worse. Far. Far. Far worse.
Still, when I discussed Riku Sanjo's capabilities as a writer, I did mention that he himself has admitted he is not good at all with managing his casts the larger they are.
That specific fault proves to be one of the big problems with kyouryuger, for it is a 10-member Sentai team, which is the fault of TV Asahi producer Motoi Sasaki, who incidentally is also in charge of Kyuranger, to show how much they did not learn at all from this, and also Toei producer Takehito Omori, both of them mandating this be the largest Sentai team of the time, to the guy that is best writing smaller casts. In that context, I'm amazed it didn't turn out worse.
But if any of the information I found about Kyouryuger's issues is true, Omori is responsible for several of the forced directions the show went in. Rumor has it he rejected Riku Sanjo's wish for two of the main team members to be women, for Noel-san to be married and have his wife and kid involved in the show instead of his sister and niece, and also the substituted in Canderilla romance rejected, for there to be a Kyoryu Yellow,
an interview I do have the transcript for, Omori in fact stating stupidly that yellow had become a female color so didn't want them part of the show, when in the entire history of Super Sentai that has never been a thing, and by doing so messed up the entire primary colors motif Sentai had for 36 years.
And calling women weak so there's no need for there to be more than one amongst the team.
When Kyoryu Pink's actress Ayuri Kono made a statement hoping with how she was playing a badass that they might be able to draw back female fans the show had lost to the Pretty Cure Magical Girl franchise as a good series knows no demographic. Only for her boss on the show to be a jackass and shoot that in the foot.
As a consequence of Sanjo not being good at writing larger casts and doing this entire show solo instead of collaboratively, the biggest sin the show is accused of committing is neglecting most of the characters and giving them less screen time than you would see of other series.
And it's a valid critique. Though, one, again, I would more find kyouryuger guilty of since it uses its cast so much worse than this one did, and yet people still slander this show as opposed to that one about it. As there's only so much time in a 48-episode series to go around. The larger a cast, the more there is going to be a fight for focus. And it doesn't help that Sanjo spent more time addressing the main story arc than character developmental episodes. Admittedly, the number of members was mandated to him, so in this instance, it was out of his hands.
But this example is endemic to the superfluous characters of other series, once again, kyouryuger especially, with how they fucked that up, or in Power Rangers adaptations that add nothing aside from filling space. If you have nothing for them to do, producers, don't force them into existence.
But yeah, I don't hate kyouryuger, and while I can admit to its criticisms, it's not as bad as half the fandom has demonized it as, and it lacks many things that piss me off about Toei's works.
Hell, I and many others rate it as a far better dinosaur show than Zyuranger, once again because its focus is on the team it's supposed to, instead of the idiotically unnecessary guest cast, and its stories are competently written.
And it wasn't the series that started the greater problems of modern Sentai, and though the main character is far overused, he's not a fucking idiotic asshole like his successors would keep turning up as, that makes him worthy of the disdain they get. Join me in the next video, and I'll begin to showcase why.